GM everyone, welcome back to the Solana Weekly Wrap-Up, where we chat through Solana's biggest stories straight from the Solana newsroom. I'm joined, of course, by our senior journalist, Finn, and we're going to break down what's moving the ecosystem, what's just noise, and what's actually worth your attention. Now, a quick reminder, nothing here is financial advice or investment advice. It's all for informational and educational purposes only. All right, Finn, GM, how are we doing?
GM Jack, doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you very much. Now, before we dive in, the overall mood in crypto, and particularly on crypto Twitter, still feels a bit shaky. People are unsure if we're mid-cycle or it's already cooling off, but somehow you've got things like Zcash and OR that are still going parabolic. I mean, the rest of the market's just sort of doing chops at the moment, and I think a lot of people are feeling a bit sidelined here. But seemingly out of nowhere last week, we got the Bitwise Solana ETF going live despite this ongoing government shutdown. So first things first, how on earth did Bitwise pull that off, and why aren't we seeing tokens like SOL also explode like Zcash as everyone expected?
So, first of all, credit to Bitwise. This is some real 4D chess, I think, from their part. So, my understanding is that every existing SOL ETF filing in the Form 8A has what's called a delayed amendment, which basically stops these filings from going auto effective within 20 days. Now, given that the government is shut down, there's no one in there, stamping forms and turning the lights on and doing whatever they do in the White House. So, for the time being, once that 20-day period was wound up, Bitwise basically met all the other criteria, and they were able to go straight onto the New York Stock Exchange. So Bitwise saw this, no one else saw this, and because they filed that amendment on the 8th of October, they were able to kind of get across the line and hit the stock exchange on the 28th. So well done, Bitwise.
Well done, Bitwise. So I guess the obvious question that most people are going to be asking here is, are all the other issuers also going to do the same thing and push some amendments? Are we going to see the rest of them getting approved in the coming days and weeks? And I guess maybe more importantly, we've been talking about ETFs for months and months now, right? So did this early ETF debut actually help Solana in the long run? Or is it really a matter of all of the ETFs getting approved and then we see some sort of parabolic run in SOL price?
Yeah. So other ETF filers are kind of in a difficult position at the moment. We've already seen VanEck, we've seen Canary, and we've seen Fidelity file amendments to follow the same process. So these three issuers are expecting at least that if the government shutdown continues for at least another 20 days, they will be able to get onto the stock exchange and start trading and join Bitwise and Grayscale. Other prospective filers are still on the fence. It seems that they believe that government shutdown will end before 20 days. So we kind of have to just wait and see what happens there. Otherwise, yeah, to your point, we have expected these ETFs to be approved. It's been 100% certainty basically since July. So that's given traders and investors plenty of time to front run the news and take their positions before. So I think the ETF approvals have been priced in for a long time. There's no surprise there, and that's probably why we're seeing a somewhat muted price impact since those have gone live.
Interesting. Now, another story that's circulating at the moment is declining Validator count. It seems like a bit of a catastrophe at first, but I know you've been speaking to people like Max Kaplan from Soul Strategies and Seb from Phase Labs. We're actually saying it's kind of a good thing, right? So this trade-off between quality and quantity, is there a solid argument to be made there, or is it actually costing Solana's decentralization? Like, what's happening there? Break it down for me.
So validators are something that is pretty dear to my heart. I find it super fascinating, and I think it's just an integral part of everything we do. So people need to know more about it. When I first saw the graph and saw that all the validator count is declining, and we're down 33% year to date, the knee-jerk reaction is like, this is serious. We're losing decentralization. Validators don't want to be running this network anymore, and it looks bad. So I asked people who are a lot more knowledgeable about this than me. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Seb. You guys are doing great work. And they basically explained that the trend down is probably less dramatic than we think. It represents more of a shift to quality over quantity. What we're seeing is malicious actors and sandwich operators getting purged out of the ecosystem. Teams like Jito and Marinade blacklisting them. So instead of having lots of validators that are perhaps not doing their job super well, we're getting a smaller group, a more concentrated group of people who are more motivated, who are more aligned with the network itself. And basically, yeah, it's to all of our benefit to have a smaller number of better validators, essentially.
But overall, you think it's a reasonable trade-off? You think it's net positive?
Yeah, overall, I think it's great. And I think there's actually a lot of great things coming that will kind of flip that curve and send it back up. So one of the biggest issues that validators face at the moment is voting costs. Vote transactions are quite expensive. They cost anywhere between 70K and 80K per year based on current SOL prices. And these are the transactions that essentially help us reach consensus. So, they're pretty critical. If you have less than 100K stake SOL, these voting costs pretty much cut into your bottom line and make it very difficult to run profitably if you're a smaller validator. So the Alpenglow update that's coming in the next year or so, the timeline on that is pretty vague, is actually going to eliminate these costs. So smaller validators will be able to run without having that voting cost kind of chew into their bottom line. So I suspect that once that's up and running, we will see this trend reverse and we'll start seeing the number of validators start increasing again.
Awesome, awesome. That's what we want to hear. Now, another story: Solana's ICO comeback also raised a bit of an alarm bell in my head, because it's another one of these is it good or is it bad kind of stories with people thinking about ICO season in the past. It didn't always go the way investors wanted it to. So Solana's ICO comeback. Our SolanaFloor data analyst Ario covered this, I believe. It surprised me, right? Because aside from the sort of negative connotations of past ICO booms, Cards, Avicii, and OMFG are all trading now at about 5 times higher than their original ICO price. So well played to anyone who actually participated in those. But are we looking at some sort of healthy, permissionless fundraising revival here, or is this just a newer, shinier version of what we've had in the past?
I think there's a lot of contributing factors to this. I think on one hand, people are tired of the trenches. People are tired of cutthroat meme coin swapping at small valuations on shit coins and meme coins and pure financial nihilism. So the fact that we're seeing really good teams line up with MetaDAO and with Metaplex Genesis to actually bring meaningful products to market is really great. And I think there's a lot of creative things happening there. And I think people want to support that. They want to have stake in companies like Avicii and like Umbra. So I think it's very healthy, to be honest. I think it shows that we're perhaps maturing, at least as on-chain traders. So really excited to see where that goes.
That makes sense. Okay, over to mobile news. Now, obviously, Seeker is something that everyone's talking about, but Helium Mobile reached a 500,000 subscribers, so it's a massive, massive milestone. Congrats to Helium. What's going on there? They're talking about buybacks. They're talking about sort of incentivizing the ecosystem a little bit more. Talk me through the story, and more importantly, what does this tell us about real-world adoption of Solana projects, of things like Deepin working out there in the real world? What can we learn from this?
So I love to see Helium keep growing their subscriber count. I love to see Helium continue to grow their carrier data offload. So what a lot of people don't realize is that the Helium network actually supports a lot of traditional telcos. A lot of that data actually gets offloaded. That then teams like I think AT&T, we'll call them a team. Companies like AT&T and other traditional telcos actually use Helium's network to send messages and send data and all that kind of thing. And that's steadily on the rise. So while there are 500,000 subscribers to Helium, there's actually over 1 million people who use Helium every day without even necessarily realizing. So I think what's fantastic about that is that all this continues to feed into Helium's economics. Buybacks for H&T are really, really strong. They're doing about 50K in buybacks every day. And that's all from real world use cases. As long as people need to use their phones and as long as people need mobile data, Helium's going to keep doing really well. So I think that's fantastic from a perspective of an industry that's hyper financialized and hyper trading orientated. Like in my view, if Solana crashes to $100 tomorrow and all of a sudden no one wants to trade meme coins anymore, a lot of our dexes and a lot of our launch pads are going to have huge drops in their revenue. If that happens, people are still going to be using their phone. People are still going to be using mobile data. So Helium is going to continue to thrive. So I think that's probably the coolest thing about this. And it just serves as a real proof of concept for Deepin in general.
Exciting. Okay, now on the other end of the spectrum is, of course, these launch pads, right? The super speculative side of life, the hyper financialized side of life on Solana. Pump.fun acquired Padre, right? So it's a slightly more degen focused story around launch pads. Now it seems that we're settling down a bit as far as this launch pad war that we've been tracking in recent weeks and months. Is Pump.fun now declaring that they are once and for all the leader, and that's going to sort of remain to be the case? They've got so much money they can basically just go and acquire different teams. Is that the sense that you're getting here? This sort of vertical integration? Like, what's going on with Pump.fun?
Pump.fun doesn't need to declare itself the winner in the way that the king doesn't need to say he's the king. Any look at revenue and volume and just daily users shows that Pump has shrugged off every challenger it's ever faced. They're probably going to continue to do that for the foreseeable future. The Padre thing is interesting because Pump actually had an advanced trading terminal in the past, and it didn't really take off, so I think they wound it down. So yeah, the Padre acquisition is interesting because it basically expands their net into other chains. We're going to have some access to BNB chain, to Base, things like that, and that all is going to flow into Pump's continuing revenue empire. So a smart move. I think a lot of people were a bit salty that because they held Padre token and they were invested, and then Pump acquired them and basically said like, well, that's it. Padre's finished. That token's worthless. But they are refunding that and they are repaying that value back to Padre holders in Pump. So honestly, in my view, if you were a Padre holder, you're getting a better deal, right? Like Pump's revenue is staggering on people say that the on-chain market is dead and no one's trading meme coins anymore. Pump is still doing over $1 million in revenue every day, and all of that revenue is still being funneled into Pump buybacks. So yeah, I think they do a favor.
Yeah, this acquisition then, is it fair to assume that overall it's very bullish news for anyone that's holding Pump, anyone that's long Pump?
I would say yes. I think it's not as dramatic as what Pump is already doing, but it's incremental wins that keep the ball rolling. So momentum's on their side. Pump's going to keep doing Pump things, and they're going to keep performing, I think.
Yep. So moving on, speaking of momentum, HumidiFi, obviously these guys sort of came out of nowhere, but it seems they're Solana's fastest growing DEX that no one had really heard of until recent weeks. Now they're teasing a secret airdrop, a TGE. What's going on there? I know there's a Jupiter involvement as well. Break HumidiFi down for me.
So HumidiFi is fascinating. HumidiFi is a prop AMM. It's proprietary AMM. Instead of using community source liquidity and being fully open and free for all and anyone to deposit into, HumidiFi basically runs its own liquidity. They actively manage markets, and they're able to give ridiculously tight spreads that rival SEX execution. So I personally, I'm a big fan of HumidiFi. They run in the background of the network. So if you've done a SOL to USDC swap at any point in the last 4 months, you've probably used HumidiFi, right? They've dominating the market. They're doing about 35-40% of Solana's on-chain volume every single day. So they're everywhere. But obviously no one knows them because they don't have a front end, they don't have a website, they don't have a token. So yeah, they're quietly operating in the background, but they've become probably the biggest part of Solana DeFi that no one's aware of. As for the token, in the last few days, we've seen the HumidiFi Twitter account be a lot more active. They're dropping all kinds of hints. I think what's really fascinating with HumidiFi is that they've broadcast that there's no VC involvement. So no investors have had access to these tokens yet. They're going to be launching through Jupiter's new ICO platform, the DTF, Decentralized Token Formation. So that's going to be very, very exciting. Yeah, very, very curious to see what HumidiFi does. But ultimately, there's still very little known about this token. We don't know the tokenomics. We don't know the utility. We don't know how much revenue HumidiFi makes. So there's still a lot of questions in the air around that.
Yeah, well, cue the splash emojis to anyone who's actually farming that, because I think it could definitely go somewhere. I mean, we'll be covering that, I suspect, in the coming weeks as well. Now, my favorite part of your weekly newsletter, Finn, is obviously where you share the stat of the week and you share a tweet of the week. So we've got the Ethereum community going absolutely wild this week, taking some jealous shots at Solana for signing an exclusive deal, which may or may not be only 6 months, with Western Union. And of course, that's spiraled into a days-long debate about, what's fair game. Is Western Union actually shooting themselves in the foot and challenging their own business model, or what's going on there?
I think the Western Union integration is quite curious because stablecoins and blockchain is all actually disrupting what Western Union kind of set out to do. So the fact that they're is for them, I see Western Union doing this as almost like a can't beat them, join them type thing. So that's great for crypto adoption and everything that comes with that. With regards to whether there was a secret deal inked behind closed doors to make sure that this was a Solana exclusive for 6 months, it seems like it's a bit of rumor. It's a bit of a rumor mill. A lot of members of the Solana Foundation have come out and said that this isn't true. A lot of ex-foundation members have come out and said this isn't how the foundation that I know and that I appreciate operates. So I think it's just a lot of butthurt Ethereum .eths and people from other chains who are kind of trying to tear down Solana here in this. There's no evidence to suggest that this deal happened.
Absolutely. I hope that continues for everyone who is participating in that, Finn. Thank you for sharing, mate. And if you do want Finn's full breakdowns and his spicy hot takes every week, then head to SolanaFloor.com and subscribe to his newsletter. It is delicious, and you're going to learn a lot.
Jack, always awesome to hash it out. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Take care.